Peggy and Salz here at Mobile Growth Summit, a huge show with some huge people and people you may have seen throughout the years. I know I have, and that's why we have Deniz Gezgin. You are really the veteran out there in the industry, very seasoned. I mean, how many companies have you worked with today?
Thank you, Peggy. Yeah, I worked with several big companies, I guess Machine Zone, Zynga, FunPlus, Tops. All the way from gaming to kind of like a digital e-commerce platforms. I've been around.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, I've
been there, done that.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can look back a little bit differently, and you can say, okay, here we are at another growth conference. You know, one of many that you've attended. But there are many people just getting into it, even if they're just coming in from, I wouldn't say non-gaming, but just like the different genres of gaming, because it's so split. What would you say is one of the, I wouldn't say the opportunities, but what do you think they're missing in their growth strategies? There's got to be something that they're not looking at the way you used to look at things when you were growing your apps.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I've been attending Mobile Growth Summits since day one, and you know, very close friends with Dave, and I think what's been going on, you know, there was a lot of conversations about what's your tech stack, how do you track your users, how do you attribute, early days, right, 2 years ago, and I think right now is what are the things that we can do in terms of acquiring users, like influencer marketing or playable ads. So those are the things that I see a lot of opportunity for different game companies or app companies to acquire users, and you know, also testing in different geos, different age groups. I know targeting gotten, you know, a lot better over the last year or two. Automation got a lot better, so there are opportunities in terms of analyzing what's going on, the speed to analyze and react, and adjust your bids and you know, campaigns, your creatives, and there's a lot of efforts in automation. So I would say a couple of different ways of acquiring users with influencers and playable ads.
So they're hot for you, influencer marketing, playable ads?
Special playable ads. You know, I see that for games specifically, I see that a lot. I see that being a very helpful way of testing your product versus you know, monetizing or doing anything with it without even installing, right? Yeah. And that is kind of, you know, going into the Nike store and putting a Nike shoe, and nobody charges you anything, or you know, you don't need to spend any more time than the time that you spend to put it on. Yeah. So you know, I like it a lot, you know, as you can see. So I see that as a potential. Influencer marketing also gotten a lot smarter, and people are actually creating campaigns that means something for their users.
How's that gotten smarter? I'm just curious. I mean, because at the very beginning it was just get someone who has cred, and get them. Hopefully they love your game. That's a must. But people weren't even looking at that sometimes. And it was just, you know, just let them loose. And now I think it's more about having a system, also trying to measure uplift from this. You know, and not just with an attribution, you know, with the link. How would you say it's gotten smarter?
So I think by trial and error, it got smarter, right? So we've been talking about influencer marketing over a year and a half, two now. You know, it was up and coming. Last year it was kind of booming, and this year it's getting better in certain areas. And one being, people tested a lot of different ways to do influencer marketing, and let's say 80%, 90% failed, and that 10% that didn't fail is now being used in different areas. Customization is one of them. You know, if you have let's say a soccer app like we did at Tops, you would like to do down the funnel campaigns with the influencer instead of just saying, hey, install this app, right? So and I think the way that we also approach influencers now with these ideas is those discussions are happening up front versus after the fact. So
and how did you do that at Tops? I mean, did you go for celebrities, or did you just go for like die-hard soccer fans?
So we've done a couple of different things. We used an influencer company called Karios in UK. Very good guys, two young guys. They've been professional sports players. One of the co-founders themselves, and so we went through the route of already established YouTubers, plus, you know, Tops has a very close relationship with the Premier League. We had some soccer superstars like Harry Kane or a couple of others to post for us. Harry Kane basically did a video for us and said, hey, I love playing this app, and you know, it was huge for us. But you know, our regular YouTube influencer videos also did very well for us. So I think the way that that we're having these conversations with influencers gotten a lot better over the last year because
haven't they gotten a little bit more expensive too? Because now they're sort of banding together, going to agencies. You've got that guy in the middle again. I mean, how do you
there's
get
a lot.
around that?
You can't, right? There's a lot of that happening because at the end they would like to make money, and to be honest with you, for most of the influencers that you deal with, it's a headache for them, right? If they don't want to deal with you, they don't want to email back and forth with you. They much rather have their manager if they're big enough to deal with this, right?
Got it.
So, I mean, when you bring in another person into the equation, things usually get more expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a natural thing, but I think if these success stories of influencer campaigns, meaning, oh, I got a lot of installs, plus I got a lot of DAU, MAU out of this person, gets bigger and wider in terms of the number of influencers, what will happen is the repetition of influencer campaigns will get a lot higher so that they won't have to charge that much. So let's say for an influencer standpoint, if I was an influencer, I would be looking at it, oh, if I made $150,000 a year from influencer campaigns, I would be super happy. Let's say that is the case, and I think most of the influencers that I interact with think this way. They don't really care if it's 15 campaigns or 20 campaigns, as long as they get to the $150,000 a year. So, this...
How about from your end? Because you have to also care about how to measure the impact. How did you measure that?
So we did lift, we basically, traditionally what we did, we shut down everything else. And we went with the influencer.
Went for the,
Because, that was the early days, and now I think influencers are also getting a lot smarter in terms of using their link and promoting the link. And so that we can actually attribute that through Kochava, Adjust, all these attribution partners. But I think, very, very brute way of testing it is just, shut everything down and then look at the lift. And then we came out with a CPI and an eCPI and watch that if it made sense on the ROI side and repeat or not.
So you talked about playables. That's something I'm hearing a lot of people get very, very excited about. What else do you see on the horizon? Maybe of the formats, I don't know, maybe it doesn't always apply. Of course, it came from gaming in the first place, rewarded ads, right? Rewarded videos, rather. What gets you excited?
I think just the overall automation and machine learning of bidding and removing bids and
so the in-app header bidding, that's where you're at.
And then also
and we're almost ready for it. I mean, the pieces are coming together.
Absolutely. And then also the things that actually sits on top of the Power Editor, Facebook Power Editor, because Facebook, in my opinion, is a very powerful platform that you can acquire users very profitably if you're smart and if you have a product that works. And there are automation services or APIs or SDKs now that sits on the top of Power Editor, and they've gotten a lot better. And that excites me because you don't have to mess with data that much. Like there is some sort of an action-based algorithm or a platform that does the decision making for you, so that you can spend your time on okay, what are the conditions that I'm looking for? Am I looking for 150% yield, D30, and this is not making sense? Let me adjust it, and it does it for me. We kind of went from doing the optimization manually to doing the decision making, and then optimization happens as you change levers, which really excites me.
So was it always in-house for you, or did you also use agencies?
No, so because of the absence of the such services that I mentioned to you now getting better sitting on top of the Power Editor, I've always chosen, whenever I was at FunPlus or Tops, take things internally and build it out ourselves. And because it also becomes a competitive advantage, if you're good enough and if you're smart enough to build a tool like that. And it almost became like, a function of a CRM tool, if you will. We would call it an analytics tool. But yeah, I've always chosen to build it internally. But I think in about a year or two time, we won't have to build it internally.
So where are you always focused? I mean, we hear so much about going deeper in the funnel. We've got so many panels also about how to retain users, and that's really important, I believe, because of the math, right? It's always going to be cheaper to retain than acquire. That's just a fact. But there is a certain way that if you do CPI in a smart way, you don't really necessarily have to go for the full funnel because you're making so much momentum, so much money basically up front. I mean, are you a deep funnel person, or are you still thinking there's tons to be made in just acquiring smartly?
So I would say it depends on the type of app that you're working for, right? So I was lucky enough to work at Game of War and a strategy app, and I would call it a strategy app. And then I was also again lucky to work at Zynga Poker. So those, they're fundamentally monetized differently.
Yeah.
Right, and one is much more of an impulse buy. When you play poker with your friends, or you win and you lose, you make these impulse purchase decisions. Versus in a strategy game, those decisions might result from either losing or fluctuation in your resources. That happens later down in the game funnel. So it depends. Whatever app.
Well, there's so many genres, so
absolutely right. And I also at Idle Games, I worked in a truly, in my opinion, revolutionary Facebook game called Idle Worship, which was a Facebook canvas strategy game, and the monetization was solely based on collectibles, and it was different.
Yeah,
so it was whale driven. It would happen very late down the funnel, even later than the strategy games that I've seen. Always in a strategy game, you look at D1, D7, D30 retention. In that game, we used to look at D60, D90. Can we keep him that long?
Because collectibles.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, because you had the passion.
Absolutely,
you can keep them coming back.
Because this is that hoarder mentality, if you will. You first start to hoard things that are free for you, right? Or people that give you, and instead of buying for them or paying for them. And then once you actually run out of those things and you accumulate so many of them, you actually start collecting valuables, and valuables actually cost money. So it's same psychology.
Absolutely. And then you're invested in it, so you're going to stick around.
Absolutely. And then there's no way to get out, because psychologically you're invested in, and if you're coming from that, I would say pre-hoarder, stage. It is very hard to get out. It's very similar to gambling. Once you become a gambler, once you become a gambler, it's very hard for you to resist if someone asks you to go to Las Vegas, or So it's same mentality.
So this worked for the games that you were at. I'm just curious, looking out at what you've done. I mean, how long have you been now in games?
This is my 12th year.
I was going to say over 10 years, because I've known you quite a while.
Yeah.
So if you look back and you look at all that you've done, what would you say is like maybe not your best growth hack, but maybe your personal success and triumph, where you really nailed something really well in what you did to get there? Yeah,
so I would say it was Game of War, because I had a very small team, and maybe most of the people don't know. I was actually the lead of the team that launched Game of War. And I've joined the company pre-beta or pre-launch, and did an analysis on the ROIs and the GOs, and then went back to Facebook and said, hey, for this type of CPIs, we can acquire this many users, and the numbers were, very high. So and we were able to execute it. We launched the app, and we've gotten quite a bit of installs on a daily basis, and actually app scaled as we predicted. So that I would say, in terms of commercial-wise, that is my highest success, or highest point of success. But I've done a lot of things around.
How about your smartest growth hack? Because in the early days, to be fair, it was not. I wouldn't say it was simple, but to be a pioneer, you could get a lot. Now the competition is much more to say, oh, okay, Facebook, we got these CPIs. This is what we can do. They're like, maybe not. But maybe there's like a growth hack that you can share with our audience about something that they can do now that maybe they're missing because they're focused someplace else. Yeah, I mean,
I would say a step function purchase offerings would be good to test right now. What I mean by that is, if your purchaser buys a $2.99 package, I would strongly suggest that follow it up and look at the fluctuation of their currency balance, and follow it up with a $4.99 package, and then if they purchase that $9.99 package, that worked really well at Machine Zone, and it works for a couple other companies very well. And
so like really smart upsell.
Absolutely, and that when you say really smart, it's very important that you need
AI?
To. Yes, I would say
that.
Look at a lot of the balance fluctuations of the users, whether it's a hard currency or a resource, and do a lot of customized targeting around that. I don't want to give too much of the secret sauce.
No, but you've given some ideas, and of course the AI is a must, because although we're talking about it so much and saying, well, it takes the heavy the heavy lifting out of the bidding or something. You know,
Absolutely.
it does a lot more in segmentation targeting than we're using currently.
Yeah, and the other thing that I also want to mention. So, obviously there are a lot of UA managers here, and that's great. And we're focusing a lot more on the top of the funnel, which I do get the idea why we're focusing there, but we should never get away from thinking about how down the funnel also affects those numbers, right? It doesn't mean anything if you can retain at a D50 or 50% D1 and your day 30 is 3%, right? So you cannot have, you can have the best onboarding ever. It doesn't mean that your product will succeed. Because it's getting very tough now in terms of the CPIs getting higher and all that to actually break even. So although I applaud this drive against let's make sure top of the funnel works, let's make sure top of the funnel works. Now that I would see as a challenge for the UA managers, they also need to start becoming product savvy, right? So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's good to have the great knowledge about who the best partner is and where the best CPIs are. But we will see some UA managers starting to gain some product chops, meaning what's happening after the onboarding.
Yeah.
Why are we not doing this versus this, right? Here is a spec for you.
That's going to mean a different type of team, though, as well, isn't it? I mean, it's going to be like more product marketing together. Yeah. Maybe even pulling CRM into the system. I mean, that's the type of team that I put together at Tops. We had a. So you were ahead of your time.
Yeah. I mean, basically, what we have done, because I always saw this as because UA manager handles all top of the funnel data, right? So they would be the most knowledgeable about where. Like if you say, okay, this is the point that you're responsible to, and whether it's the last step of onboarding, or you can tell the UA manager, it's not the last step of onboarding, it's first purchase. So then you gave him, let's say anywhere from D0 to D3 or 4 in weighted average. Like that's where users usually convert. And I think that's a great skill to learn for the UA managers. And to come up with solutions to improve conversion, right? After conversion, it could be other things. It could be how do we get people to reach level 15? Although you may not be a product guy, but I did build my teams anywhere.
And it's also always stretching.
You challenge people, goal. Right? I mean, UA manager. In my opinion, being a UA manager is not just you know a lot of people and you get the best CPIs and you know how to calculate yield. I mean, Excel can do that, right? So, I mean, so for me, it's always challenge yourself. Obviously, be very meticulous and data-driven, but also try to understand what product is trying to do, right? And give solutions.
So, last question. We talk about challenges. I won't say you're in a challenged point. You're at an interesting point in your career. You maybe can't tell us what is next, but give me an overview. Like, what is next for Deniz?
So I'm really interested in platforms that does digital goods as well as physical goods. I think that is going to be, booming. As devices get better, as product offerings get wider, and I think this digitalization takes it to a whole another stage, in my opinion. Right? You have augmented reality and all these other stuff coming in, and I think. That kind of excites me, maybe a central platform or a marketplace that handles digital goods as well as physical goods as good as Amazon does.
Yeah, and those little AR, very interesting idea. We won't go there. I won't make you tell me any more about it.
I can't say anything, but probably in 3-4 weeks I will be able to,
Well, Deniz, we'll have you back then. But in the meantime, thanks so much and have a great show.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to have you.
Thank you.